4, 3, 2, 1. And we're live. Oh, let's see. Center the camera a little bit. Welcome, everyone. And welcome to an old friend. I think for a couple of years, Lasker.
Thank you, Endo. Good to be here.
So the first thing when we talk, like whenever we talk about anything, I feel like we always drift towards like weird topics, like hard dreads and all that stuff.
So weird.
But we never talk like what you're actually doing at the moment. So I just noticed when I looked your chart that you're actually in Beltram's Corp, and I didn't even know. So like, how did that end up? Like, you wanna start right there?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I'll say is it's not that exciting. I'm only kind of playing. I Gosh, I'm trying to think how far back to start. Well, I guess at some point I was continuing to play Eve, but maybe not with the same vigor I had. I'd gotten sick, and for a while something was sort of wrong with my adrenaline response. I don't know what exactly. I presume some area of my brain was inflamed, but I always loved trying to function with adrenaline. It's always been fun for me. I've always liked when there was a disaster at work and everybody had to scramble to pull things together, make it work. It was one of the things I liked about Eve. I enjoyed the shakes, right? It feels good. You bunch of adrenaline, your heart starts pounding, and you're like, all right, let's not panic. Got a bunch of shit to do if this is going to work out okay. And at some point, instead of the sort of usual sort of gentle humming and everything glowing as everything comes online, instead I would get this kind of intense nausea, and then I would be exhausted for the rest. And I've, for much of my life, sort of lived with a general contempt for my internal state. Like, if I'm hungry or tired or cold, doesn't matter, there's stuff to do. And so for a long time I sort of tried to ignore it and just keep playing despite that. But it wasn't that much fun, as you might imagine, to search for a couple hours to get a couple minute fight that then would make me feel ill, and then I'd have and so I kind of stopped playing for a while. And this last year has been a lot of time in lockdown, a lot of time spent trying to exercise and eat better and get as much sleep as possible. And we've fiddled with my drugs. My neurologist, bless her, has gotten the migraines at least partially under control. And I logged in the other day and I got a fight, and it was fun. And I was, fuck yeah!
Finally.
Yeah, it felt really good. Another buddy of mine helped me track down a monitor that's has a setting that's kind of like an old school Kindle. It's just gray on gray. Everything's very muted. And so one of the problems I've got is that screens set off migraines. And so the longer I look at screens, the more likely I'm to get a migraine. So that was another thing that kind of drove me away. But sort of between me working as hard as I can on the health and my various doctors doing their thing, it seems like I'm in a little more functional place, which is sort of exciting. So I logged in and I played a bit, and that was fun. And then I got chatting with two buddies of mine. I've always been really active in faction warfare low sec. Flying around a frigate in faction warfare low sec is probably the thing I've done the most in the game.
I never understood that part, to be quite honest. I have to be quite honest. I never understood why people would get excited about one-on-one frigates stuff. Like I'm not judging, but
no, it's fine. People like different things.
Yeah, like I was not like those fights. They're over so fast.
They are.
And
we don't PvP shame.
Like I don't know. No, we don't.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's like a downside.
Just not my
They're
thing.
over real fast. But they worked really well for me in a bunch of ways. So when I was still working, I was extraordinarily busy, but I had a ton of junk time where I'm like sitting at an airport and we're going to take off in an hour, but I've got an hour to kill and I've got my laptop. And, sometimes I'd read, sometimes I'd do work, but sometimes I wouldn't have anything to read and the work was done. Log into Eve and I can undock a frigate and fly around for an hour and maybe get a fight or two. And it's so much more fun than just sitting at an airport doing nothing. I don't need to pull other people in. I don't need to schedule it. Then later, as I was working less and being sick more, sort of same thing, right? I don't need to schedule it. I don't need other people. If I have to stop at some moment, fine. Who cares, right? If there's an emergency and I have to stop while I'm in a plex, again, it's triggered. And I like a lot of my losses. A lot, definitely not. Some of my losses were I'm sitting in space and then I would get a phone call and I'd be doing a work phone call and someone warps in. I'm like, I can't interact with that shit right now. I gotta actually interact with the real world. It's fine. You get the trigger. It doesn't matter. So those were some of the selling points for me. And you still get a little bit of shakes, a little bit of adrenaline. And what I always thought was fun. I love to win, of course. I think most people who play competitive games do. But I also really like it when my opponent enjoys the experience too. Like my favorite thing is to crush someone in a way that they're like, wow, that was neat.
Look at all these new experiences.
I like that too.
Yeah. This is a fun and novel thing that's happening. And I've been able to do that at the negotiating table at work sometimes playing chess, sometimes doing jujitsu, and sometimes in Eve. And if you take a really weak frigate and find a way to make it perform well and beat someone and they're like, wow, how on earth did that happen? That's a great feeling. They're having fun, you're having fun. Novel experience.
You subscribe to Pam.
And it felt like because of the frequency of interactions in faction warfare, you can always find someone to fight. It felt like I could do that a lot. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So, like, how did you end up with Belgium then? So you just picked a random corp that your buddies were in?
No,
Is that what happened?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so they were operating in the area of faction warfare space that I always came back to. And two of my buddies, Zathan and Stuffman, were like, hey, we're in this corp and we're doing low sec stuff. We're doing PvP. And I thought, hey, that sounds fun.
All right.
And I signed up. I have not successfully plugged back into the Eve world yet. Well, we'll see.
And
I have logged in a couple. Oh, go ahead.
Do you still do your hard red thing? Because I think most people that know your name know them from YouTube videos and stuff. And especially in the early days of hard reds, especially when people weren't aware how strong they were and how, like, not only tank wise, but like how strong they were like at killing shit too. You did like a lot of hard red.
For sure.
Like you lost a lot of them too, but like I think overall
11 total.
You probably did quite well with them. Only 11? I would have thought it's probably 20 or something. The amount of videos I saw.
Yeah, I feel like I lost. I should go count again, but across all tunes, I think I lost a total of 11 of them, and I think I had 30 some hard red. And I'm counting every engagement you could have in a hard red as a fight.
That is
so. Group.
Wait a second. So you lost 11 dreads, and you said you had like around 30 like really good fights with them?
Well, no. 30 engagements of any kind. So lots of those are not really good fights, right? A little gang shows up, and they're holding you down for a bit. You kill two of them, and they don't have any DPS, but you can't track, and then they wander off, right? So like, I don't know how many of those were like really good fights. I think every really good fight I had, I turned into a video. So however many videos are on the channel. Like, I don't think there was a really awesome fight where I was like, nah, I'm just gonna not bother with this one.
So my corp, it's like everyone, I think everyone who has known me for a while knows, like, I hate hard reds. I really do, right?
They're real strong.
I mean, so the problem I have with them is, like, yeah, you get some fights, especially early on when nobody knew, right? Like, how strong are they and stuff.
Really.
Yeah, like people were just whooping in, like, yeah, like, sure, I'm gonna go like orbit him at 500 because I apply the most, right? And but that's obviously not how it works with hard reds. But I just think that gap that was between caps and subs, it's kind of filled now, right? So like those like hard reds or even super caps with projectors and stuff like this, they just skip that part. Like they can just fuck up subcaps just as well, you know what I mean? And then I just don't like it overall as a concept. I think maybe if it was like, and you could maybe like give an idea of like how do you think it would work out, but if like HOR guns would be like not fully polarized, but maybe like a little bit, so you have like less resists. Because the problem is you need a solid fleet to even think about killing a HOR dread. And if you don't watch out, it catches you and you're dead instantly. So I always thought like, it's just like a flawed thing. At the beginning though, I like when you did your videos and stuff, I completely agreed. They created more content than they killed. But at some point that wasn't the case anymore, right? Because people adjusted, people learned. And
there's a lot of things going on. So like one of them is, are you fighting a HOD dread and his friends are going to show up first, or your friends are going to show up first? Because that changes the equation a lot.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's even more lame when you have like a shit ton of supers and whatnot ready to go too, right? So you drop the HOD dread first, like, and nobody can even think about dropping anti-cap dreads, right?
Most people that use capitals, though, do it under their own umbrella.
Exactly.
For good reasons, right? You're like a little bit throwing them away if you don't. I like HOD dreads. Obviously, I thought the gameplay was really fun. I've always, in my heart, wanted to fight 50 dudes at once, and you don't get a whole lot of chances to do that, and Eve makes it possible. So that's cool. It is the case that a HOD dread is a little bit like a fleet of 10 harbingers and 30 guardians. And it doesn't show up that way on the overview, but they have a lot of repping power, especially if they're well built. I feel like people kind of understand that now. I think HOD dreads are remarkably easy to kill, actually, with very few things, but they're not the sort of things that people roam in. In one of my videos that I've got sort of a compilation of fights that did not go my way. The last one is me in a Phoenix in low sec fighting a bunch of dudes in Tama. And I kill some assorted trash. And at the end, there's like 30 ships on grid. But really what killed me is they had like 3 Guardians, Balgorn, and one of the Triglavian battleships.
A Balgorn will do, right? Obviously.
Well, so the Triglavian battleship did a lot of nuke pressure as well, and also did like half of the damage, and it was a really high number. That was the only fight I've ever used every cap booster. So it was like 168, 30, Navy 3200s, but their cap is continuous and mine is not. And so these 5 pilots with a bunch of other stuff happening wore me down and killed it. But they were able to do that because I didn't have friends, right? If you're in somebody else's story, and changes the equation a lot. But I don't think, like, if you're planning to kill a HOD dread, I think it's really, really easy. They were all AB fit. It was very hard to track. They all had mini tanks and enough buffer that I couldn't get anyone down before reps started landing.
But you already pointed out the problem, right? You have to be ready for it. Like, who roams around in like a setup with 3 Guardians and a Balgorn? That's fairly rare, right? Like, so we did a roam.
Don't roam HOD dreads either.
Say that again. What?
People mostly don't roam in HOD dreads either, right? Neither is really a great tool for roaming.
Yeah, not anymore, I would say, right? It's fairly rare, unless it's under Umbrella and stuff like this.
Sure.
But like, so we roamed around not too long ago with like a mixed setup of like a concept like we call Lars with large Ansel reps. And we brought some curses, like 3 curses get the job done, but they take a lot of time still, right? So it's all about like... Right? Yeah, and these guys, they didn't have enough backup, so they whooped in some Brutixes over and over again, and they died over and over again. But if it was a staging of like a bigger group, there's no way we killed that HOD dread in time, right? So even with 3 curses and then 6, 7 other like fairly high DPS ships, we would have had the problem of killing him in time before anyone shows up. So I think it was a good time for HOD dreads at some point, especially when you made the videos. It was a good time for it. But by now, I think CCP needs to address these and adjust it a little bit. I think they're too strong.
I can't even really speak to that. I've played the game just a tiny bit over the last 12 months, and it's all been in T1 frigates. That's possible. I will say that, like, in the case where you've got a group out and it's near some big gang staging and there's a drown field, it's definitely the case that you can't kill it. But it's also the case that it can't really interact with your fleet in any way. You can just move around and it can just watch you.
Yeah, well,
it's a
at
little
times,
bit like an artillery emplacement or a machine gun emplacement. You got to move around it, but it can't get after you. Can't chase people in a hot red.
at times that's right, but sometimes you kinda like you're stuck. Like for example, like a hall ref lands on a gate. There's basically a bubble around that hall ref, like 100, 150 almost km around it, where you can't really take any fight with your subcaps. Because that hall ref is just gonna, like, it depends on how big your fleet is, obviously, and what you're flying, but in general, that limits your options so much, right? So
it's rough fighting near the machine gun nest.
Yeah, I just think that's it goes a little bit too far. But at the same time, I agree with what you said earlier. You don't see all that many hard reds recently.
I feel like every time we take a small gang out, there's always a hard red that undocks just to fuck our content.
I guess it's a little less than it was before, but it's still a lot actually. Yeah. So I don't even know what to say. Like we have to run statistics on how many hard reds are actually getting used all the time.
I feel like it's like 75% of the time that we do small gang roams, like there's a hard red.
Maybe, yeah.
This was for sure easier in the old days, but I always felt like the big challenge was undocking in a hard red against a group that would look at that and say, we want to fight that, because often there'd be a gang and there weren't enough of them. Like I started fitting out Marauders and doing some stuff there, not because I especially wanted to fly Marauders. They were more expensive than hard reds for a while. And just sort of strictly worse in almost every way. They have a micro jump drive and some extra utility highs. And if you're going to move around a bunch and so on, maybe that's a totally different thing. But if you're going to use them as like a machine gun nest, but I needed something that could fight 15 dudes. Because if you show up on a hot red, or I found when you show up in a hot red and there were 15 dudes, they just leave.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do?
Right, of course, right? And so you had to find a way to offer appealing fights to the roaming guy.
But that's my biggest point against them, right? I say that about hard reds, I say that about citadels and about supers and like when hard titans were still a thing and a lot of things.
Hard titans were an abomination.
No, it's like, so there's a big problem when it comes to like actually identifying the problem because the fight doesn't happen. Right? The problem is there, and then people say like, oh, we would stick around and fight something, but there's a hard red here, boom, we move on. That fight never happened, but it doesn't show up in any statistic. Nobody knows that fight didn't happen, right? CCP has they have no way of telling like, okay, there was content that was lost. Like lost content shows up nowhere in any statistic, right? So,
True.
Yeah.
My rule of thumb when I was doing a bunch of hard red stuff was that I would try to engage gangs of 25 to 50 people in sort of frigates to cruisers. And, you know, if it was 50 and they were cruisers and they had a bunch of Logi, maybe I'm kind of nervous at that point. Obviously 25 is not enough of frigates. But it felt like they could like test my tank, but I could also try to kill them. But I always wished that they had more sizes. I wanted a mini dread that had 2 guns and a mega dread that had 4, so I could kind of dial it up or down depending on the size of the gang, give them a bigger or smaller.
How would you do that?
What's that?
But how would you do that? It's like, how are you ever gonna scale it up or down?
No, I was saying I think it would be cool if CCP had like a variety of hulls. Different levels.
Or maybe take the existing hulls and then change them up. So, for example, the NAC is more like. I mean, it already works like that to a degree, right? Because the NAC tanks the least, I believe.
For sure. Right, and so like one of the things that I would do is if I was deciding what do I want to undock, I would take a NAG instead of a Moros if smaller gang, and I thought they'd have less DPS to try to pull them a little bit. You know, it's a thing you can do. You can kill me. Come on.
Dirty tricks.
Yeah.
Dirty tricks.
Well, I mean, you got to try to offer. Like I also literally had less tanks, so I don't know if it's a dirty trick. I'm trying to give them a fight that they think will be fun. That they'll say, "Hey, I want that."
Yeah, but
I think that's like the most.
There you go. The most.
I think that's like the most important aspect of trying to do small gang stuff is you have to be able to make yourself appetizing enough to actually get engaged on. Otherwise, everybody's so risk averse that they're just going to run, and you're going to sit there and be bored.
Number one thing.
Number one thing about people that play Eve with like highly skilled scepter pilots that are going to go ahead and grab things and hold them, and then they get there to kill, and then like a fight forms around that. The only way I've ever gotten a fight is like wandering into an area and being like, "Anyone want to fight?"
You guys want to fight me, please?
Yeah, or look dumb, right?
Pointed somebody, and
that's why we use the ESS now.
Yeah, I mean the ESS is a good fight generator.
I'm totally ignorant of the ESS and how it works. I've heard people talking about it a little bit.
Oh.
So like very short since we talk about it a lot, but pretty much like it's a bank for ratters. And so but now they have a payout did they change it? What was it? 2 hours?
Every 2 hours it's now.
Yeah, so it used to be every 3 hours. They changed it to every 2 hours. So a percentage of your ratting bounties go there, but then someone can come in and they can go into the site and steal the ISK from the ESS.
Oh, that's
before the 2 hour payout.
Yeah, but the important aspect now is that you get tackled inside, right? So you cannot warp out unless you're 75 km away from the center where you warp in.
The ESS site is that you steal from is bubbled.
And you can't bring a Hordred, Lasker, all right? I'm just saying that right now.
Yeah, I also play 2 on frigates.
No
and
frigates.
Only ABs work inside the bubble too. Yeah, that's an important part.
Yeah, I like ABs. MWDs are too fast for me. Everything's flying around.
Yeah, it's only cruisers, battle cruisers, battleships, and then AB fit. Basically, I mean, you can, which I predicted at the beginning would be the play most people would do. Probably is get in, take range, take the fucking thing with some Aldous or whatever. And then have them warp in, and you're comfortably at range, right? I haven't seen a whole lot of people do that yet, but I mean, I bet there's a lot of like nightmares zooming around doing that.
I'd say nightmare seems like a good tool for that job.
Yeah, you'll see a lot of nightmare. I mean, they're so slippery already. Like now, imagine you can't even use your MWD to catch them. Mm-hmm. Like, what are you gonna do? It's like
that sounds really fun. Like I kind of want to fit a nightmare and.
Yeah, we did it with what's the cruiser again? I forgot. Phantasms, and we did it with like all kinds of shit. I tested a good few things.
Nice.
It's usually good fun, but I think they switch it to 2 hours, so it's not really as attractive anymore to steer.
Yeah,
because
you don't have a chance to like build up the bounty as much as before. Because the biggest downside of this is with the payouts, like you get like 80 mil on average for these sites every like 6
modest.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's not an ISK making venture really. Like I don't know, I'm sure some people do it to make their ISK, but it's not really lucrative enough to just spend your days warping around. You can through the agency window like look at the systems and see how much like ISK is in every system, but I mean you can also use it as like an indicator of what systems people are actively ratting into.
You know what? Talking about this, what I'm just thinking about is like Bjorn. Like Bjorn has been doing this from the beginning. He was super hyped about the ESS changes, and he even started his own corp, which I thought he would never do. Like I didn't expect that one. But he
what did he call it again? He called it something.
Bank robbers.
I don't remember. Yeah, the bank robbers.
The bank robbers. But I feel like, am I wrong when I say since the patch from 3 hours to 2 hours, he's kind of less active?
It's just not worth it anymore. You just don't have enough time to build up enough ISK. But I don't know. I guess enough ratters like
he stopped
screamed
soon?
about it.
Magic F8, you want to explain? God damn it, we have to have Bjorn on again.
Yeah.
Ask him what's up.
Yourself.
Explain yourself. Exactly. But
He's
yeah.
disbanding the bank robbers.
So you were talking about your health issues, and I'm not sure if you want to go
I'm not shy.
deeper on that stuff, but maybe like because it has to do with what I want to talk to you about too, which is
fire away, man.
the life coaching thing, right?
Okay.
So maybe like you want to explain, like, so you were in a job and you enjoyed your job, and you were pretty successful from what I can tell. And then health issues came up. Like, you want to maybe, I don't know how
Yeah. Talk about it a little bit.
quick.
Talk about how it came to be, like what the process of events were.
Yeah, so I worked as a consultant for a number of years. We sort of specialized in negotiating agreements for our clients. I liked it a lot. I liked the people I worked with. It was fun. As you said, I think I was pretty good at it, much promoted and so on. And
Did we lose you?
and then,
Oh no.
well, no, I'm here. I
Just
got
thinking.
lost in my thoughts a little bit. I was trying to decide how
See,
long
that's
ago I wanted
that's
to
why you need a
work.
cam, Lasker, so I could
Yeah,
tell.
you could see my face. I'd be thinking thoughtfully.
Exactly.
But so no, at some point I got sick. I started having problems with my energy. I was real tired all the time. Couldn't figure out what it was. Kept going to different doctors. And then things started getting worse, and I started having chronic migraines and photosensitivity and memory problems, cognitive fog. Ultimately, it turns out I have multiple sclerosis. And I retired in the spring of 2019, which I absolutely, 39 years of age, I absolutely did not expect to happen. I kind of swore I was never going to retire. I liked working, and my family is sort of filled with men that retired early and then immediately died. So it seemed like, well, I'll avoid that.
As long as you keep working, then you're good.
Working, easily solved. And then at 39, forced into retirement, I was like, well, this isn't.
Right.
Much of that's all right. Stuff happens, and then you gotta figure out what next.
Gotta adapt.
Much of the last couple years has been working really hard on my health. I've had the good luck to find some fantastic doctors. I'm on a wide variety of medicines, lots and lots of exercise. After my first bad relapse, I guess my nervous system was badly inflamed because my body was telling me, hey, you need to slow down, and I wasn't doing it. And so I had a bad relapse. I thought it was a heart attack. I went to the hospital. They did an EKG and said, no, it's not a heart attack. Go out and wait in the waiting room. And over the next couple of minutes, I became almost entirely paralyzed, and I couldn't speak. Which, if you've never had the experience, is not fun. I don't recommend it.
A little scary, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was very. And I through dumb luck, I happened to be holding my phone as this happened, and I could still, like, my head was kind of flopped forward onto my chest a little bit, and I could still move my fingers a tiny bit. And so I texted my wife, and I texted a couple of my colleagues / friends. This was a Thursday. We were flying home that day, and one of them, but two of them came, and then one of them ultimately canceled his flight to stay with me. My wife tried furiously to get on a plane and fly there, and like packed up our kids and drove them to grandma and grandma's, and then drove to the airport, and then I think bought a ticket, and then like in the process of running there, she was like, she got there just in time to see them close the door, and they never opened the door when they closed. Couldn't fly out. And then it just passed, and all of a sudden I was fine, which was surprising. Welcome, of course. I was real glad about that. And so like I finished up with the doctor, went back to the hotel, flew home the next day. And for a couple days I seemed fine, but then my energy level just collapsed to the floor, and it got to where I spent most of the day lying on the couch, and I wouldn't move my eyes, and they were unfocused. Not because I couldn't, but because that took too much energy, and I wasn't willing to spend what little there was in the gas tank. and I started walking as I slowly started to improve. And at first I could walk. The first walk I went for was literally 6 houses down in the back. And that was it. That was all my energy for the day. And then the next day I did 7 houses. And the next day I did 8 houses. And I just kept building up. And ultimately got myself built back up to the point where I was walking 4 miles a day. And me and my doctor kind of looked around and shrugged. We didn't have a diagnosis at that point, didn't know it was MS. But it seemed like all the symptoms went away. And so I went back to work, and I worked for about a month. Well, so I was working this whole time, like in little bits, right? I was friends with the guy who owned the firm. I was paid hourly, so it was easy to move hours up and down. But I worked from part-time work back up to full-time remote work, and then I spent about a month on the clients and ran too hard, like a fool, 60 hours a week. And then I had another relapse. And that was when we realized that this wasn't a thing I had gotten over. Instead, this was a permanent thing. So that was real frustrating. Although that ultimately did lead to me switching neurologists, finding the one I have now, who's fantastic, getting a diagnosis, and once again starting from being able to walk a very small number of houses. Build back up again.
When it comes to health issues, like, how important is it to have the right doctor? Huh? Like, you hear that story over and over again.
You always need a second opinion.
That's a great question. My only experience with the American medical system. I can't speak for other medical systems. My experience has been there's a percentage of doctors that give a shit about their patients, and there's a percentage of doctors that know things and can solve problems. And if you're willing to shop doctors, you can find somebody who cares about your problem and can solve it. But
I totally agree.
I feel like I interacted with a lot of doctors that either were just totally disinterested in the fact that I had a problem, like they were going to get paid for this session and they'd show up. Very clear they were not spending even an instant outside of it, thinking about it, reading, trying to come up with solutions.
I had the same thing happen to me too, because like I talk about a little bit, but I've got 2 herniated discs in my back, and like being in the Army, we're assigned a doctor, but we're also able to kind of like go around and see our own doctors sometimes. And my military doctor is just like, nope, we're giving you surgery. We're not going to treat you anymore. You need surgery. And that's like the most permanent thing I could possibly have is spinal surgery as a 28-year-old. So
bad outcomes.
Right. It's like you hear so many horror stories. So instead, I just have to go see civilian doctors and pay out of pocket, and they're able to help me without me getting fucking spinal surgery.
Yeah, it feels like, from my perspective, what's needed is like a meta system on top of the health system that helps you find useful doctors that know things.
Like Google reviews for doctors.
But it doesn't seem to exist. It seems like you just have to willy-nilly try them.
It's probably somewhere.
I guess. I went to 6 different back doctors, and the 4th back doctor, it was real weird. I came in, I described my problem, and it was like I was talking to a guy in a bus station. He's like, "Man, that sucks. My back hurts too." And then he told me about the back doctor he goes to. And on one level, I was like, I guess I'm really glad he told me, because it ended up being the thing that let me start solving the back problem. But on another level, aren't you a back doctor?
Right.
Cool. And then I met with her, and every doctor, he did also order an x-ray. Every back doctor I had been to before that ordered a scan, looked at it, and then gave up. And some of them acted frustrated with me that they were giving up. Mm-hmm. But then, so the 4th doctor recommended the 5th doctor, and I went and talked to her, and she didn't ask for any scans. She asked me questions, and she had me move around a bit. And then she suggested we try one thing, and then if that doesn't work, she was going to recommend me out to another guy. And then that guy had a thing that actually solved it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I think like the body is such a complicated, thing that
sure.
you can't have like, I think in order, to say I'm a back doctor, there's so many aspects of your back and your spine and your nerves and everything that nobody is good at everything when it comes to like being a back doctor.
That's fair.
So you have the specialties.
And presumably the doctors that I went to that couldn't help me or wouldn't help me were helping other people. And it's just, what problem do you have and what are you good at?
I mean,
that's
at
why
least
my doctor
So at least those
That's-
doctors send you over to the other doctors and not just
they're willing
claim.
to say instead of just taking the money.
Yeah, which thank goodness for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My doctor, when he told me to get surgery, he's like, I've had it. You'll never run again in your life, but as long as you take an ibuprofen every day, you'll be fine. It's like,
you're not selling it, man.
yeah, like, okay. Well, you're like 70 and,
So that might just all sound a little bit depressing for everyone listening in, but there's a reason why I brought this up, right? And the main reason is yeah, a little bit, but I think it's still interesting for people to hear, and it doesn't always have to be all about FCing or Eve in general. Like, we're all people,
We've
right?
all got lives.
So, but you were forced to retire because of those health issues. And then you decided you needed something to do. And I remember the two of us, we were sitting there talking about stuff. And as always, we're going to talk about that in a minute too, actually. Someone brought it already up, like BJJ and stuff. We always talk about all kinds of weird stuff, right? For example, BJJ. And then you said, what could I do, right? And then a while later, you made actually a Reddit post and you're offering life coaching, right?
Yeah.
So explain that. What exactly is that life coaching that you offer to all Eve people, or I guess people in general, right? Depending on how many people are actually interested.
So I was trying to think. We're in lockdown, of course, so many people, and not working a job. And I was trying to think, what sorts of useful things could I do unemployed from my home in a pandemic? And I was thinking about the work I used to do, and as we would work with our clients on negotiating agreements, there was lots of time spent thinking about problems, brainstorming in offices, trying to figure out, we're sort of trying to design a future state for an IT department, right? Today, all of their network stuff is provided by AT&T, but in the future, they want it to be someone else. And they're trying to write a contract that solves all their problems. Lots and lots of sitting around talking about problems. And it also ended up being, say 2 to 4 dozen people spending a lot of time together for 3 to 9 months. And so you talked a lot about work, but you also talked a lot about personal stuff. And people would talk about their careers. They'd talk about, they've always rented and this is the first time they're buying a house or whatever. And we would sit around throwing around ideas for things that, hey, make sure you think of this when you get the inspection done, whatever. And I really enjoyed, I like being
useful
in both parts of this process. I like hearing advice and giving advice, thinking about how can we do everything the best possible way. And so I wondered, could I take that one little weird side thing that was not even really a part of my job, but it was a lot of fun, and could I try to turn that into a thing? And so I sort of put out the general call, hey, if you would like some life coaching. And I tried to write up some of the things I thought I could help with, make it clear that I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer. But I'm a guy who's lived in the world, and I like to read books and solve problems. And if somebody's got a thing they're stuck on, for me at least, sometimes I find I'm totally stuck, and then somebody gives me the opportunity to talk for a while, and that seems perfectly clear. And so maybe some other people are like that.
I wish I would have had you to help me with my house the first time I moved into a house by myself, because I didn't realize how little I knew about everything. Like you have to change the air filter for your air conditioner. I didn't know that, and I went I don't know how long without changing it.
I mean, that's the first world problem.
Yeah.
Air conditioner. We don't even use that over here.
I have no idea.
I don't even have an air conditioner. Well, so how many people have already have you already helped, maybe, or are you in the process of? Because it's not that long ago that you posted it. Maybe a couple of weeks, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like about 2 dozen people reached out.
Wow.
2 dozen?
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It was all in the first 2 or 3 days. And so at first it was kind of drowning a little bit. If you reached out, and I apologize, slow. My apologies. Not my intent. But some of them just wanted to like bounce an idea. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And I'd say, well, I've never done that, but here's the stuff I'd think about. And that's been the whole interaction. I've kind of settled into a regular cadence with about a half a dozen folks, and that's been nice. And we're working on different stuff. You know, they're living their lives and they're wondering what next. And I think that's a fun question to think about. I think about it for myself a lot.
Like,
frankly,
maybe so you call it life coaching, but maybe is it more like life planning? Isn't that a little bit more accurate, I guess?
Maybe.
I think it sounds like a lot of people just want someone to talk through stuff with, not even necessarily tell them any, like, not even looking for any input from you, but it's a lot of people, you know, are more successful or able to process their thoughts if they have somebody that they can like bleh everything to.
I do that all the time, actually, right?
Yeah. You just
so for some people, I'm sort of just functioning as a sounding board. For other people, I'm relating experiences I've had. You know, they're stuck in their career, say, and they can't see what to do next. And well, I was once stuck in a similar way, and I did this. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's useful, and maybe it's not. Right? They have to figure out, you know, which of my ideas they might like to try. Yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's fun. It has indicated to me that one of the problems I'm going to have when I start to interact with the real world again is I'm struggling with schedules. And I've always had really bad ADD. I was frankly bad with schedules before, but now much worse.
If you need a life coach, let me know because I'm great with schedules.
Like if you could figure out a way to help me. Honestly, much of my career I leaned on coworkers who were better at that stuff than me. Bless them. And there's, you know, my wife helps me organize to an extent. I think a lot of the reason I get to doctor appointments and stuff on time is her. But I think I need to embrace a little more organization if I'm going to function in the world. So that's a to-do for me.
And then so the typical thing that people come up with is like just like bounce it off and all that stuff. But it's all career based to a degree, right?
No, not all. I'm happy to talk about a variety of topics. Lots of people are trying to figure out, what do I do with my career? And I think maybe especially right now, a number of people reached out to me. They're having trouble finding a job, and almost all of them said, "Hey, I feel like it's just me. It's not just me. The economy is a mess. Global pandemic. There's an enormous fourth or fifth wave industrial revolution with everything automating. You're not the only one having." And you know, we talk about job hunting strategy. I don't know that I'm an expert in that, but I've looked for jobs before and I've used strategies.
Resume building at all?
Yeah, resume building. So that was the thing we did a lot in consulting. Every time we applied for a gig, you would rewrite your resume. And you're always using real experiences, but you're picking the ones that are most relevant.
Right.
In the best possible way. So I've talked about that with some folks. I feel like I was very good at office politics. And I think it is an important skill to function in the world that lots of people just have spent no time on. So some time talking with people about that.
So what's the biggest point you would make there? Like where people, like what's underrated when it comes to office politics?
I feel like people... Boy, I could spend a lot of time talking about this.
And I already have my answer in my head, but I want to hear what you say.
Super high level, 10,000 feet, zoomed back. People imagine that groups do things, and it's perfect nonsense. Humans do things. Sometimes they do them together, but you're working in an environment, you're trying to negotiate an agreement, whatever, and let's say purchasing and technical and legal, none of them get along, right? They all want different things. But as it turns out, there's a bunch of specific humans inside those groups, and those humans want specific things. And if you go and talk to all those humans and understand what they want, you can then sit down and say, I suggest this solution, and you try to craft it so that it satisfies as many people's wants as possible. And everyone looks at it and they say, oh, that's a brilliant solution. It's if you guys had talked to each other, you could figure this out. But often people won't. And especially if there's someone you don't get along with and you're kind of in charge of your own time in an office environment, which most people are, because you've got to make decisions and so on. People who don't like each other avoid each other, but you get these communication breakdowns in organizations that stop the organization from functioning because the head of finance and the head of operations don't like each other. And so they won't go to each other's offices. They don't send each other emails. And if you can go talk to both of them and then carry the facts that they both have into a meeting, you can help keep everyone grounded in reality, moving in the same direction. I could go on and on.
It's
Sounds
funny
like an
because,
Eve Corp.
yeah, well, being a staff officer in the Army, I deal with a lot of the same shit too, and it's like the exact same thing. Like I'm the only logistics officer in my unit, right? And then I have like these operation dudes. With us, the biggest issue is that like, everyone's own job is their own priority, but we're all trying to work towards a common goal. And then you have the issue where it's like nobody knows exactly what the other section is doing. So everybody's always like, well, those motherfuckers never do anything. They're just sitting around all day and like, being lazy and blah, blah, blah. Like, what do they even do all day while we're over here working our ass off to get this stuff done? So it's like just misunderstanding each other with the intent so that you can all work towards the common goal. And then understanding what each section or like each group does within the organization so that you can get a better understanding of how things flow and why people think the way that they think, because everybody's focused in on their specific aspect that they're working towards in the organization instead of coming together to look at the bigger picture.
We're all very mired in our own viewpoint, human foible.
And I agree with Angelo Filiak. He said it's universal. And it is interesting though, because I do see that when it comes to corporations versus the military, is like a lot of the issues that we have, it's just the exact same thing in the corporate world. But people are people no matter where you go. So
people are people.
It's even the same in game, right?
All of them from their point of view are the good guy. They're doing the right thing and their behavior makes sense given their set of facts they have access to in their point of view.
Right. Their little magnifying glass.
Right.
Yeah, and
which frankly all of us have.
Yeah, like I just said, right? It's like it's the same in every area where people have to work together, right? Be it Eve, be it an office, or like in the military. It's always very similar, right? Like human behavior is always pretty similar. You can get lucky, I guess, if you have like a really good team and they just happen to like each other, all of them, which is, depending on the size of the team,
To get a whole group to like each other is like...
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Sometimes it all comes together though. Sometimes just things are going well and people are having fun and...
Yeah. And so, I guess when I look at like corp stuff or line stuff, or if you would have like a company, like it's all about recruiting the right people, right? Don't take those, if there's someone who has like the greatest killboard, like I'm just going to keep it Eve here, the greatest killboard ever, he does all the stuff and like he's like a great PvP, but he's a complete dickhead. You can't take that guy in.
That would never happen.
Well,
guy should go be a soloist, and then while he's doing that, he should work on his socials.
And that's simply because, like what you just said, like the chance that someone doesn't like him is so high that then it would cause so many fucking issues along the way. Even if you personally would get along with him, right? You would still have to think like, oh, there's gonna be like drama down the line.
I'm a huge fan of team dynamic over like individual excellence. Team dynamic means so much.
Yeah, that's why I don't know. That's why I really like our corp, me and Panda's corp, because it's like, the number one rule is no drama. And
it's a good rule.
I think
that's the only rule actually.
and it's working though, because like everyone in our corp is just so chill and like we don't have issues compared to all the other corps. Like I feel like, I don't know, we're just so like close knit with each other just because there's no bullshit.
You know what? I would even say, especially, technically we're not really a German corp anymore, but especially for a German corp, we have a little drama because like there's horror stories like German corps. There's always drama sooner or later, and it's
Yeah,
the
because you
dumbest
guys are
stuff.
stubborn as fuck.
Well, you guys are stubborn too, right?
No.
But yeah, I don't know what it
No,
is.
like Germans.
But German corps, it's like they're notoriously, like at some point, it just like it's craziness. But yeah, we avoided that for a long time, luckily. But yeah, hey, so that one thing, and I already, sorry, Miranda, you wanted to add something?
No, I wanted to talk about what you're probably about to bring up.
Oh, the BJJ. If someone
Yeah.
said I said BJ, no, I said BJJ. All right.
It's okay. I explained
so-
Halu.
Like, but whenever Lasker and I talk about anything, it kind of almost always goes in that direction, right? And then so BJJ, for people that wonder what it is, even I think most people by now should know, right? It's not that much
No,
of a.
you'd be
Probably.
surprised.
Oh, really?
Actually.
But
Yeah.
so let me I guess give you like a super short version of it, but it's basically the martial art when it comes to ground game, right? So if you're on the ground and you're trying to choke someone out or like, you know, manipulate joints and stuff like that, that's all considered Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, it starts standing up still, but like it's
Jiu-jitsu is like wrestling, but instead of focusing on pinning your partner, it's all just about joint control and positioning, so that no matter what like weight or height your opponent is, if you can control their joints, which are the same no matter who you are, then you're able to dominate your opponent.
Yes. So the funny part is I've always been a fan of like, I mean, an MMA fan anyway, but especially jiu-jitsu. But I've never trained. I've never done it because like there was never a gym close by. And I think if I'm life coaching myself right now, I would say like when this pandemic ends, it can be a shitty gym actually, right? Like I can just like
Don't even
train
need a
with
gym.
like I don't think there's a good gym here for it, but I should be just going into the best gym I can find, no matter what, right? And just make it a little bit of a better gym, maybe, right? But just like trying to like push it or something.
When I first got into it, I was a teenager, and I think it was 95, maybe it was 96, but I watched one of the UFCs, and I, had the same reaction you did. I think it was the fourth UFC. I was like, oh my God, look at this cool stuff.
That's where everyone's got hooked first.
Look at them flipping people and shit. This is amazing.
And I looked around, and the closest thing I could find was Aikido, so I started doing that. And I did it for a couple of years. And there was just a little bit of wrestling on the ground. And I was terrible at it, but I wanted to do it so much. And there was not a lot in the way of instructionals or whatever, but everything I could get my hands on, I was watching and reading. I had some buddies that lived a little ways away, and they went to another jiu-jitsu school. It was like a traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu school. But I had a buddy that his parents, they didn't mind if he had people over, and so we would go over to his house, we'd spend the night, and we would spend much of the evening wrestling with each other on his basement floor, which was just carpet on concrete.
I've been there. Yep.
Amazed no one was killed, but we just ton of fun. And then at some point, someone opened a jiu-jitsu school, and I started doing that. Loved it. It's
What belt are you?
What's that?
What belt are you? Or do you do belts at your gym? Some gyms don't.
Yeah, so I trained for a really long time with no belt. I jumped around schools, and a lot of the places I trained were like more no-gi, where they weren't as into that. And that's
just rash guards and tumbling.
Yeah, well, like back in my day, there were no rash guards, and so it was like people wearing wife beaters, and it was just whatever you had, right? But
so what do you guess? Like a blue belt?
Oh yeah. So I trained for like 10 years, no belt, and then I staged a very brief comeback where I was going to train while I was on the road, which was not practical. But for like 3 months, I trained at a school in Austin, Texas, in like 2010. And at this point, I hadn't trained seriously in 5 years. I was out of shape, and But the guy who was teaching there, he's like, "You're obviously a blue belt," and he gave me a blue belt. I'm like, "Okay, thanks." So, what skill level do I have? I don't know. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna be in real bad shape. I guess I'm glad I got the blue belt. Feels a little silly training for like 12 years to have a white belt. But I don't really want an especially large target on my back because I'm gonna be just in the worst. Like, I remember what it felt like trying to wrestle out of shape. It's so hard.
30 seconds and you're just gassed.
And there's not. I'm not really aware of a way to get grappling cardio without grappling. Like tons of running doesn't do. Like it's better than no running, but you're still gonna gas really bad.
Yeah.
But I don't care. Like I'm totally comfortable getting tapped over and over again. My one goal. So I'm trying to go back again, trying to resume Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was sort of trying to daydream goals for myself. Now that I'm retired, I got to do stuff. And one of them was maybe someday I could get so healthy I could get back to jiu-jitsu. And I just, in general, I'm working on increasing my health as much as possible, exercising as much as possible, trying to eat as well as possible, sleep as well as possible. And I went to a new doctor and he was like, "Well, what are your physical goals?" And I said that. And I said, someday I'd like to do it. He's like, "Why someday? Why not right when COVID's done?" And it was the most exciting thing I've ever heard someone say in my life. I can't tell you. I've been sort of squealing with glee in my heart ever since. So we actually argued about it a bit. I'm like, "No, I'm not healthy enough to do that." And so we went through sort of where I was at physically, and he sort of convinced me that I'm not so far off of being able to do it. And I've been exercising so much harder. I was kind of phoning it in.
Pure motivation. That's a smart doctor right there.
I get to do the hobby I've enjoyed the most in my life. Maybe. And that's a great motivator. I've got, when I was doing it before, I had school, I had work. I've got nothing going on right now. It's a lot of time to get on the mat and do jiu-jitsu. And so this was, 3 weeks ago. I spent a lot of time since then sort of exercising, reading about exercise and diet, watching jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube. Watched a lot of hours of jiu-jitsu videos on YouTube, which we didn't even have back when I did it. It wasn't a thing. So yeah, I've been real excited about that. I'm very hopeful that I'm able to get my fitness to a level where I'm able to get on the mat and not get injured. And then if I can do that, I feel like I can start bootstrapping from there, right? If I can get on the mat and roll around, cardio will start to improve.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. I think that's sorry. I think that's important, like in your case, when you have like health issues and stuff, to find the right guys to train with, right?
Yeah.
Like that you don't just run into some knucklehead gym that just fucking,
That's another thing I gotta kind of manage is I sort of love going hard. And like when I was doing this for a little bit, I was skating on the edge of the destruction of my body, got injured all the time. And I always got back to training as fast as possible. And that seems less wise given my current circumstances. So I gotta approach it with a little more chill.
Yeah, that's literally how I herniated the 2 discs in my back, is because I used to be a competitive weightlifter. I used to do kickboxing. I'm actually a blue belt in BJJ also.
Nice.
And yeah, high five. And
it's fun.
I get you guys.
So yeah, so like
I'll catch up.
It was the same thing too. It's even like you work out, you don't give yourself enough time to recover. You push yourself too hard. You injure yourself a little bit, but then once again, don't give yourself enough time to recover. And you just keep putting that stress on your body, and eventually something's going to snap. And that's the biggest reason that I can't go back to BJJ anymore. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to, because like literally with the way that my back is right now, if I got a bad throw, like I could literally paralyze myself. So like, yeah, trying to look at alternate things. Something that I put in our little list of questions for you, because like Panda has to listen to me talk about it all the time, is doing yoga. And when I injured my back, like the really bad time that I did, I literally couldn't walk for about 2 weeks, and yoga was the only thing, like yoga and going to the chiropractor were the only things that got me able to walk again. And at one point I was even able to run. And it was like literally all just because I started no-lifing yoga.
That's awesome.
So have you ever tried it?
Yeah, I have. I have done some yoga in the past, not a ton. And as I'm sort of working on the build myself up as much as possible plan, yoga's on the list of things to revisit.
It
I have
is.
like
It's so important.
one little yoga flow I know with just a couple poses that I do sometimes. And a little bit right now, I'm sort of leaning more into the lifting in an effort to build up strength. I've always been really, really flexible. Like even now, with everything much degraded, I can like bend over to touch my toes and put my palms flat on the ground. And like I never had to work at that.
Yeah.
But because I had that, I was also hypermobile, which is like part of the problem with injury. Maybe is real easy for a joint to overbend.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not super focused on flexibility just yet, but I do like yoga. I have done it. I want to do more of it.
Yoga's not just flexibility though.
That's true.
You can do yoga for strength.
That's true.
And it's very like effective. And plus it's nice because if you do yoga for strength, then you don't have to actually like go to the gym or anything, especially here with COVID. There's so many, like I use a yoga app and you can specify if you want to do yoga for relaxation, for flexibility, for strength, like for cardio. You know, there's so many different things that you can do.
Yeah, I think I should do yoga too.
I know you should, and I'm gonna get you into it.
Maybe one day.
We'll do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it right now. I put it out there. I will definitely start BJJ when the pandemic and stuff, when shit allows for it.
That's awesome. I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Yeah, let's say in a year. Let's say like that's optimistic. In a year, like hopefully, right? In a year, I've started. We meet again. We talk about it. Let's see.
I like it. We can compare our sort of health and jiu-jitsu progress.
Yeah, luckily
we're gonna do 2 minutes in the ring and see what happens.
I'm gonna tap out in the first second.
Just choke your ass out.
I have like half a dozen old VHS tapes with me doing no-gi matches.
That's some old school shit.
Ring. And I'm like 19 years old. I weigh like 145 pounds. And I ordered these. I thought they were going to be black trunks with red trim. That was how they were described on the website, circa 1999 or 2000. But instead, they were black shorts with red trim and an enormous smiley face on the ass, which is not what I was going for. But so I'm wrestling in those, and I've thought about like sending them into one of those video conversion places, and then maybe like commenting and uploading some of them to my channel. Just 'cause they're funny.
You should do that.
Yeah, why not? Like, what bad could happen from that?
What bad could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything bad coming from that.
Yeah.
I just hope, I just hope everyone listening in enjoys like talking or listening to something not necessarily hardcore E for once, right? And get some ideas. Like we are all like doing our like own thing, and there's always like some room, especially since the pandemic stuff. People are probably rethinking a lot of things, and hopefully even the pandemic, there's gonna be only good coming from that in the end, right? I would say thanks for coming up, coming on, Lasker.
My pleasure.
I know I appreciate it very much, and I enjoyed talking about the stuff we always talk about.
Likewise.
It's always the best stuff. And everyone who is listening in or watching, as always, there's going to be a key for an Astero skin, which is actually quite dope. So I think they're still active. I mean, I don't know how long these things are going to run, but the last one was still, so I'm pretty sure this one is still too. So Thanks everyone for hanging out. Thanks for the sub earlier. I forgot who it was. I actually should have written it down. But yeah. And see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.